Hello quilting friends. This week we're going to be adding some borders to our little Bo Peep quilt, and I wanted to take some time to show you one of the important aspects of cutting your borders. Here I've cut a 2-inch strip. This is a different fabric. I just want to demonstrate with you that if you've ever had the issue where when you go ahead and open up your borders that you've cut, you end up, let's see if the camera will capture this here, you end up with borders that are not straight. So I've got a little dip right here. Let's see if this is going to show you. There's a dip there, and everywhere there's a fold, it didn't come out nice and straight. So here's one that maybe will show you even more. This is pretty pronounced here what this dip is doing. So you can see my strip is not laying at all straight. I've got it as straight as it will go, and it has got a definite curve to it, both the inside and outer. So it's just curving along there, not what we want for doing our borders. So I wanted to show you today how to achieve nice straight long strips without those little bends and dips in them that we often get if we're not careful. And that actually involves how we press our fabric in the first place. So we'll take a look at that and how I do that. So here I have the fabric I'm going to be using for the border on the little Bo Peep quilt that we have. Let's see, let me turn this way. The little Bo Peep quilt. These are the borders that are going to go around next on our quilt. I feel a little bit like the headless person here, so scrunch down, say hi, and move back to our fabric. So the trick to not having those strips that are not straight is how we press the fabric to begin with. So I have my fabric here all pressed, and then I want to fold it in half so that I've lined up these two selvage edges. And what I do is I spread my hands out, and I have it so that I've got fingers on both pieces there. So that what I can do then is I'm just going to wiggle them back and forth until they move. So necessarily when I move it this way, see how I'm getting that little wrinkle across, the diagonal wrinkle, and then when I slide it the other way, there's that wrinkle appearing again. So what I want to achieve is where it's nice and smooth, and there you can see I've got the nice smooth, and I usually look down also down at this very crease, but I can't seem to get it in the picture for you today. So so once I have that where it's nice and smooth, then I've got that ready to press that seam in, and then I take those selvage edges again lined up, and I bring them up to that fold, because it's a much simpler to cut a shorter length than a longer length with accuracy. So I'm going to bring that up to the fold, those selvage edges, and once again, and I can show you even more clearly here, that when you, with holding those, if you go that way, slide it that way, slide it that way, see how that wrinkle appears? And then what you're looking for is when that is nice and smooth. So I'll do it again here. See the wrinkles starting to appear there. And there we've got a nice smooth, and then they're coming back. So I want, again, to be where it's that nice smooth, especially down here at this bottom edge where the fold is. And once I have that nice and smooth, then you can either press it with an iron at this point. I don't. That's one less crease I have to deal with in the border. And so now I'll be ready to take this over to my cutting board and cutting mat and cut the size borders that I need, and my strips will come out nice and straight. Now I have my fabric over at my cutting mat with my ruler and my rotary cutter, and I'm ready to cut some strips. One of the things we need to deal with is that now our edges here are not lined up, so we need to trim this so we start out with a nice square piece. So what I need to do then is on my nice fold, line up my ruler marks right along that folded edge. And I'm just double checking here because this was the first fold I made, and my ruler marks are also straight across there, so I know I'm good and square and perfect. Being left and right-handed, I have the advantage of I can just go ahead and trim this with my left hand and it's not an issue, but I know for right-handed people that can be a problem. So there's this little trick we can do, and that is to take a square ruler and move it, you know, I'm using my little square ruler, you could use a bigger one. So I want to make sure that I'm close to this edge and just line up the marks on this ruler with the fold so that it's nice and square. And then I'm going to double check and make sure that I have it. Yes, so I've got my edges covered. And then take the long ruler and holding this one in place, making sure I'm still lined up, just snug up your long ruler right up next to that square ruler. Then you can move that ruler out of the way and trim up. Now one of the things I like to do at this point too, since I've just made that trim, is make sure that I am indeed square with my fold lines, which, look at that, really nice. I'm looking for that blue strip I had earlier just to demonstrate, now that you have something nice and square to hold up against it. See how see the difference in how this one is, again, curving, so that it's not a very nice straight piece. So now I can cut these strips to the width that we need, and for this pattern I know I need them to be 3 inches wide, so now I can just line up my 3-inch mark on the edge of this fabric. And then one of the other things I'm also doing is I'm double checking just one more time. My lines are lined up there nicely, so I've got a nice square piece. Sometimes after cutting several strips, you might notice that this gets a little bit off, and so then you just repeat the process of squaring up this edge to your fold again. So okay, my 3-inch line here on my border strip, and then you just cut the strips you need to make the border for our little Bo Peep quilt. And once again, we've got nice straight strips to work with no wonky bends at the folds, because we took the time to press it properly before we cut. Now that I have my border strips cut, it is time to measure how long I need them to be. And so I still have the whole length of my strip here. And so what I have done is I've laid out my little Bo Peep quilt, and then I've lined up my bottom edge of my ruler. And I'm looking at the screen going, I've got it perfectly lined up, but it looks like it's off in the picture. That's really strange. Anyway, so line up the bottom edge of your ruler, and then this is the middle of my quilt. I figured out where the middle of my quilt is so far. And then I'm going to come up to this other end, and it ends right at the 22.5-inch mark. So the border strips that go on each side, then I know I need to cut 22.5 inches in length, and then they'll fit on there just really well. One of the benefits of doing it this way is that if your quilt is a little bit off in measurements here, and you went by my directions that say it should be 22.5, but say you're 22.25, or maybe you're 22.75, or a little more, or a little bit less, if it's too short, you're going to end up with little wrinkles and waves in your border strips when you put them on. So this just is one of the tricks for ending up with a really square quilt in the end, is making sure that your borders are measured against your actual quilt for what size you need to put on there. And then you can also make adjustments if you need to for you know, how wide things are and what your finished size ends up being. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and add these green border strips, the 2 on the sides, and then I'll do the same thing after I've added those onto the sides. Then I'm going to measure across the middle, going across this way, so that I know what size to cut the top and the bottom border strips, and then I'll be adding those as well. And then we'll be done with this week's assignment and ready to move on to some more applique next time, with doing the little sheep that go in the corners. Alrighty, so I hope this has been helpful in helping you to get those nice straight border strips. Again, if you have any questions or comments, always feel free to contact me via my website or via Facebook. And I love it when you share photos on Facebook of the quilts you're making with my patterns. It's so much fun for me to see. So do feel free to do that and pop over there and join with me on that process. I like to meet you all, even if you don't share photos of your quilts. It's just fun to meet quilters from around the world and get to know you a little bit better. So anyway, with that, let's wrap up this week, and I hope you have a week of happy quilting.